Greetings, everybody, wherever you may be. Welcome once again to Kourou, the home of the Ariane family, for tonight's launch of Arianespace, the last of the year, launching for Spain, Hispasat 1E and Koreasat 6 for the South Koreans. Liftoff in less than a quarter of an hour. Joshua Jampel here with Samir Ahmedji, Arianespace mission analyst. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here with you tonight for the 6th launch of the Ariane 5 ECA GTO.
All the action just ahead. First, some opening words from Jean-Yves Le Gall.
Bonsoir. Eh bien, sixième lancement.
This is the 6th launch of Ariane 5 for 2010, with today 2 long-standing customers for Arianespace. First, Hispasat, because we launched the first satellite for Hispasat, Hispasat 1A, in 1992. And Korea Telecom, since for this customer we also launched their first satellite in 1999. As I said, tonight's is the 6th launch of this year. We have already put 10 satellites in orbit with Ariane 5 this year, and today we'll deliver the 11th and the 12th. We have to put these satellites in orbit today because coming up at the start of 2011, we have a very full schedule. Beginning on February 15th, we'll launch the second ATV called Johannes Kepler to the International Space Station. So we must absolutely stick to this program. We must also keep to this schedule because our customers also have an urgent need for these satellites. Everything has been prepared with this in mind. It's a bit unusual, but shows the flexibility and quick reaction time our Arianespace operational teams are capable of. They've prepared this launch over the past few days. I'll let you watch the launch now. Ariane 5 ECA, Hispasat 1E, Koreasat 6. Jean-Yves Le Gall there, interviewed a couple of days ago. You might have heard it was raining there. The rain today is long gone. It's been a very clear day. We should have fine weather for liftoff. We like to set the scene with the people involved in every launch, beginning here at the Flight Directorate.
So the head of the Flight Directorate is Mr. Jean-Yves Le Gall, who is our chairman and CEO. You have also Mr. Patrick Loire, the head of the facility here at Kourou, and Mr. on your screen, Edouard Perez, who is the living technical memory of Arianespace and the highest technical authority in the company. So those bunch of people, we can say that they are the highest authorities at Arianespace, and in fact, they are taking all the big and important decisions if any problems are coming.
Speaking of problems, if you look on the upper right of your screen, the countdown is ticking down, but we are in a red mode, which means, there you are, have it on the green status panels there. You have a red on the weather. Meteo, I don't know if you can see that. Meteo means we have a weather situation.
We have a weather situation, so as it was told just before, we have some high altitude winds which are a bit strong. So as you can see, if you have a look at the sky, it's pretty sunny, it's not even cloudy, it's not raining, but we have a red, and this is because of the high altitude winds, which are a bit dangerous if any problem occurs for the launcher.
Right, Ariane can launch pretty much in any weather. Rain is not a problem, lightning is a problem, but high altitude winds seem to be a problem, especially this time of the year, December, January, and February. And I do recall other launches being postponed or problems due to these high altitude winds. So it looks like this may be the case tonight. However, the clock is still ticking. We'll have more coming up. But we want to look at the launcher campaign, a resume of that, with the COEL, the Launch Operations Manager. If all the Arianespace missions this year have been successful, it's thanks in part to the availability and motivation of the operational teams, who are led by the COEL, the Launch Operations Manager. We asked the COEL for tonight's mission, Jean-Pierre Barlet, to explain what he does.
It's a bit like being the campaign commander with technical responsibilities for the launcher implementation and at the same time human responsibilities as the person in charge of all aspects of the campaign. Which means getting all the teams to work together to be ready in time for the countdown with a launched vehicle that is fully compliant with the flight definition.
Once the launcher arrives in the final assembly building, a phase called combined operations can begin. This is followed by the mission director and his payload deputy. Each afternoon they hold a meeting where their teams update them on the campaign.
You have to realize that the launch campaign involves bringing together the launcher schedule, the spacecraft schedules, and also the launch range constraints. We have a tried and tested operational organization in which the driving force is nonetheless the motivation of the people involved in the launch campaign.
Once the customer's satellites are housed inside the fairing where their temperature and humidity are strictly controlled, the final phase of the campaign can begin.
The last operations in the launch campaign are the rollout to the launch area and then the final countdown, during which the launcher is fueled and gradually brought into flight configuration, ready for liftoff.
The launcher for tonight's mission was given the green light to move to the launch zone yesterday. It was rolled out to the pad, pulled by a special truck with a gearbox with 32 speeds, most of them slow, since Ariane 5 makes the 3-kilometer trip in about an hour. We have a red on the weather, but you can see the clock is still ticking, so perhaps it's transitory. We will continue. We'll just wait and see here. Jean-Pierre Barlet was the co-el for the first launch of this year, Flight 194. That was the 50th Ariane 5, and he's rounding out the year with the last launch of Hispasat and Koreasat tonight. Some of the other people who were responsible for the launch down in the fishbowl.
So we have also the CM called the mission director. So today it's Mr. Didier Said, and he's the Arianespace responsible for all the coordination of the launch pad's daily activities. So that's to say from the arrival of the spacecraft at the launch base until the completion of all post-launch activities. You also have what you have said, Georges de Didio, the Director of Operations, and he's the CSG responsible for providing Arianespace customers with all the necessary CSG support during the satellite campaign.
You saw also the program directors handling things on the customer side. You saw Véronique Loisel, who smiled into the camera very, very graciously. They are on a day-to-day basis meeting with their customers. 7 minutes. Have, well, I thought they had passed.
DDO, arrêt du décompte suite au rouge météo lié aux conditions vent en altitude.
Tous
les moyens restent prêts à une reprise du décompte dès le retour au vert.
That's sort of what we were waiting to happen at the 7-minute mark. You saw it just shifted down to 6:59, and we thought we were going to pass it. But the DDO has called out that we're stopped. We're halted at the countdown at 7 minutes. But he said be ready to pick up the countdown at any time. Again, we're stopped because of the weather. Is that right?
Yes, that's exactly the reason why we are stopped.
All right. Well, we're going to pick up the countdown. There you see the green status panels, which summarize all the services on the launch base, from the launcher and the satellites to the weather. Weather is something nobody can really control.
Yeah, so these status panels, it's a bit like a dashboard in a car. As you can see, these are indicators giving the good health of all the major systems of the launcher. So it can give the status of the spacecraft, the ground stations, the telemetry, and the weather also. And today you can see that all the panel are green except one, the weather, because of high altitude winds. So it means that we have to wait a little bit and hope that the weather is going to be better in a few moments. And then when this panel is going to be green again,
we pick up the countdown again?
Yes, we could pick up the countdown again and come back at the 7 minutes before the launch.
And we'll pick up that countdown at -7 minutes and carry on. Now, when we have a red, maybe we can take a minute and explain the sort of procedures that are going on. It's actually a perfectly normal thing to happen.
Yes, that's true.
It's very well rehearsed. There are archives in the Arianespace libraries and in the CNES libraries of every single launch here, and they've been through this sort of situation many, many times before. As a matter of fact, you've probably been in a situation like that, and I'll get you to talk about that in just a minute. But instead of hearing us talk, we're going to show you a film now on the weather and how the weather is treated. They put up a new weather system here at the CSG about 5 years ago, and we're going to have a short film on that, and then we'll be back while we're waiting for the countdown to pick up. Film on the weather coming up, and I think you'll be hearing from the director, the directrice of the weather station.
Yes.
The authorization to launch is often dependent on circumstances beyond our control, the weather. All we can do is forecast it and consequently be ready. To anticipate this natural phenomenon, the launch base is equipped with the specific meteorological center, where we are at the moment. Bruno Jacquemin is responsible for the CSG Meteorological Center, and he's going to explain to us the methods of collection and analysis of climate information.
We need to distinguish between meteorology criteria per se, the risks of lightning on the launcher on the ground, but especially in flight where the launcher is heavily exposed. Just after it is launched, it leaves the thunder-protected facilities and becomes highly exposed to the risk of lightning.
A cloud changes constantly, and each stage of its development represents different risks which it is essential to know.
The vertical extension of clouds is highly variable and very important to our activities. A small cloud which culminates towards 2,000 or 3,000 meters is quite innocuous, but a cloud which culminates towards 7 or 8 kilometers is a crystal warning. It starts building electricity inside. In its maximum development in Guyana, a cloud can reach 17 kilometers. It is considerable compared with temperate latitudes of our cities. In July and August, in the Guyana sky, these clouds are 50% higher.
To visualize these clouds, the Meteorological Center is equipped with radar, which enables us to have images of the three-dimensional cloud coverage.
During the launch period, we have our meteorological radars operating at a faster speed to be able to have a volumetric characterization of the atmosphere, a sort of 3D X-ray, which enables us to know the position and especially the extension of the clouds, and in order to know if the clouds present a risk of lightning for the launcher. If such is the case, the launch is delayed, generally until the cloud leaves, and then the launcher can take off.
The ground winds are measured using an anemometer installed in the center of the base. The speed of the winds will determine the subsequent operations.
The ground winds are carefully measured when the launcher is transferred from one building to another, when it is stationary on the launch zone, and when it is launched.
These meteorological constraints are not the only ones to be taken into account for the launch. The flight phase also requires special attention.
To measure the wind profile in altitude and transmit this information to the safety department, we usually use balloon probes, which can be dilated, inflated with helium, which culminate at 30 kilometers in altitude, sometimes a bit less, under which we attach this small instrument which measures temperature and humidity. It is equipped with a GPS antenna in order to know the position and which retransmits all this data by frequency modulation. Thus, the successive positions of the radio probe as it is rising would allow us to reduce the variations of the vertical profile of wind in altitude and therefore the wind which is vertical to the launcher.
The wind in altitude constitutes an important factor in authorizing the launch. A very high speed may be dangerous for the launcher in flight. The orientation must guarantee the safety of the civil population in the event of launcher elements falling to the ground.
Naturally, once the launch has taken place, we do not shut down all equipment. The weather radar is constantly on and continues to disseminate regularly and continuously all detection of rainy zones to Météo France, and all our measuring devices on a mass of automatic stations continue to record data that I have obtained from Météo France, which benefits all the regional meteorological community.
These safeguard criteria instigated by the CNES CSG enable Ariane Hispasat to guarantee their client campaigns and launches with maximum safety.
We are still red. We went green for about 2 or 3 seconds while you were watching the film, but it was just 2 or 3 seconds. We're back red now. We're holding because of, I think we did get a confirmation of the high altitude winds.
Yes.
Which are keeping the launcher on the ground for the moment. We're going to explain what happens when there is a red. We said it's a perfectly normal and well-rehearsed part of the system, which is actually written into all the procedures. It's why we have the launch window, actually, right? Would you say, which gives us time to sort out anything that could come up.
Yes, and today the launch window is has been increased of 10 minutes. Hispasat 1A has increased the end of the launch window. So now we have a 59 minutes launch window. So the 80 initially was at 6:26, and now it's the end of the launch window is at 19:25 instead of 19:15.
15, right?
So it gives us a little bit margin.
So when we get something unexpected like a red here, it's if you consider it like a stop sign. Maybe you stop and you think and you try to examine what has brought about the red, and that's what people at the space base are doing now, deciding if we can go despite the winds. While we're waiting, we have another film for you on Soyuz. You know that the Soyuz is coming up 2011 here, and we have a film on the Soyuz site. We are still holding at 7 minutes, as you can see on the upper right of the screen. We're stopped right at the beginning of the synchronized sequence, 7-minute mark. And on the left, you see météo, which is weather in French, on the green status panels, which are all green except for that one, which means that we're holding. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to cut away and see if we can find out some things, some confirmation, some facts.
Yes, we'll try to gather some information, and we'll let you know as soon as we have something, because this is a bit tricky. The weather is always a bit tricky. You know, the other systems are easy for the engineer to...
They're more technical.
They are more technical, but this is unfortunately due to hazard, so we cannot blow on the wind to pass away.
So while we cut away, know that the people here at the space base and their teams around the different parts of the world which are linked to the space base here for the launch are examining how to move back into the launch window. They're looking at all the facts and the figures and see if we can launch tonight in the extended launch window. As you said, Samir, we have another 10 or 15 minutes.
Yes, 10 minutes more.
So that's the logic of how a RED works, and it's the same for the satellites as it is for the launcher. So while the crews here are determining if we can go later on, we will hold temporarily because of the weather. And while we're holding, we will be back with you because we're going to go find out some more information, and we'll be back shortly.
We'll be back shortly, so now all the fingers are crossed and hope to launch as soon as possible.
So stay tuned. minutes. We're still holding at -7 minutes. And I think we're going to be hearing from Jean-Yves Le Gall, Ariane Space's Chairman, Chief Executive, and Joel Barr, who's head of the space base here. I see those two gentlemen are up out of their seats, and I think Jean-Yves Le Gall is making his way out from the fishbowl, where the technical people are. Excuse me. I think we'll be hearing from Mr. Barr first, and then Jean-Yves Le Gall, so we'll get the official word or words on this situation. While you were waiting, people here in Jupiter, and there are a lot of them. It's rather surprising for the holiday launch, but the guests were all very patient, as were most of the technical people. I saw one or two get up to stretch their legs or were pacing, but for the most part, everybody waiting here, like us, like you at home. The weather problem is not like a technical problem. I think we're going to be hearing from Joel Barr.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to have to tell you, but the latest wind measurements that we have made just before the launch are not good, which means that we are unable to guarantee the safety of the launch operation of Ariane 5 ECA with Hispasat and Koreasat this evening. So that means that we cannot give the go-ahead for the operation this evening. I'm terribly sorry, but I have to ask Ariane Space to postpone the launch to tomorrow. So I'd like to thank you all for having come along this evening for the launch, and I hope to see you again tomorrow in the same conditions. Jean-Yves Le Gall, the President and Executive Officer of Ariane Space, will now say a few words. Thank you. Well, as you've just heard, we are unable to launch this evening. Obviously, the spacecraft have been put into secure conditions, as has the launch vehicle. We'll take a look at the situation to confirm the launch for tomorrow, provided the weather conditions allow for it. Thank you. Have a good evening and see you tomorrow, I hope.
Well, there was the latest word from the space base and from Ariane Space. Joel Barr saying the latest wind measurement showed a no-go, which means that the Space Center was unable to give the green light to Ariane Space, who operates the launch vehicle, the green light to go. And Joel Barr, representing the space base, asking Ariane Space to wait till tomorrow, which is what we're going to do tomorrow. Hopefully, better luck.
Better luck. Hopefully, all the high-altitude winds are going to be gone. And as you were telling Josh, sometimes it's easier to have a technical problem.
So hopefully we'll be back with you tomorrow, same time, same place, for the last Ariane Space launch of the year. See you tomorrow.